Mayor Bullen.
Here.
Councilmember Garitano.
Here.
Councilmember Flasher.
Here.
Councilmember Boat.
Present.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell.
Here.
Councilmember Ryan. Councilmember Bartoni.
Here.
Councilmember Bruce.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Edens.
Here.
Councilmember Rennie.
Here.
Councilmember Fun.
Here.
Councilmember Galani.
Here.
Councilmember June. Councilmember Rainbow.
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here.
Okay, thank you and welcome again. I want to just mention we have, let's see, 6 informational items before we go to action items. Is there anything any member of the council would like to discuss or about which you have a question before we get into the action items? No hands. Oh, Councilmember Bartoni.
Thank you. And I'm not too sure. I've got a feeling this is going to be for Joe, but it might be for Rick. On the new zoning or land use proposals, I'm kind of curious, is this just an FYI? I'm kind of more interested about the Wayfinder signs for town center. I mean, I've heard more than one business say that they would like some help there. So is this just like, what are you letting us know here, Joe?
Councilmember Bartoni, the fact that there are 2 places of worship related to the Hindu religion that are interested in the city of Wildwood unto itself is unique. And so I just wanted to ensure that all the council members and the mayor knew about the interest, particularly with the one that's already purchased a site at Route 109 and Route BA. The wayfinding signs come from a recent closure by Miller House and conversations that our economic development manager, Mr. Jacquin, and I've had with businesses that Sam, Julian, and I have had collectively. And so it's more just to let you know that there's some things going on out in the city that are permitted by right and may not come to the city council, but certainly they will have an impact. And then the wayfinding signage is just a recognition that we're hearing more and more with COVID-19 about the need for better identification of some of our hidden treasures.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. Thank you, Councilmember Bartoni. Councilmember Edens.
Okay, this is really just procedural. Can somebody tell me when I toggle between Zoom and go back on my iPad to pull up the agenda, if you are losing my video feed? Because when I came back this time, it said I needed to restart my video. So am I going on and off the screen, or is the video running in the background?
Your video had turned off.
I've seen you.
The video is turning off. Okay, so what's happening is I'm trying to pull up a document at the same time. Okay, thank you for letting me know.
And for those of you, Councilmember, if you would please turn your volume down to where you can hear it without any difficulty, that would be great, because we're getting a lot of reverb in the chambers here. Okay, I think that just got fixed. Perfect. Okay, any other questions or comments about anything under information on the work session agenda before we go to action items?
There's one.
All right, Councilor Remy.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Vunich, would you just mind, we had a nice conversation today regarding the erosion task force, and I just wanted to dialogue with you for a moment in regards to that conversation based off of our work with Dr. Hammer and identification of some areas of infrastructure that clearly are going to need at least perhaps either a temporary gap measure or a more permanent solution. Didn't know if you had any comments on that. And then I'll reserve a couple of seconds after you're done.
Thank you, Councilmember Remy, and with the permission of the mayor, the Department of Planning has been staffing the Watershed Erosion Task Force along with the Department of Public Works. And we've gotten to the stage now in the past year where we've identified a number of locations within several of our watersheds that are of critical importance. And so the intent of the letter tonight on tonight's agenda was to identify the progress the task force has made, but more importantly, we're at that stage where we may need an additional consultant or two to help us refine those critical locations and prepare the departments, both Public Works and Planning, for the upcoming budget cycle for fiscal year 2021. Thank you.
So if it's okay with the mayor, I'd love to make a motion right now for Mr. Vunich and the department to prepare a potential contract with a builder that we've talked about in the erosion task force with the potential to evaluate both temporary and long-term solutions for the identified areas that will affect direct Wildwood infrastructure, so that we may be able to move forward and be able to tackle some of these concerns sooner than later, especially with areas that are going to vitally impact our roads and bridges.
I think as long as that is for a contract to come back to the council.
Correct.
For a decision at a later date, that should be okay. So is there a second to Councilmember Rooney's motion? Seconded by Councilmember Edens. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And Councilor Rooney, was it your intent, I know the motion didn't specify this, but is it your intent that the proposed contract come back to the next council meeting or one thereafter?
I think it'll be based, frankly, off of success with Mr. Vunich's ability with working with the group that we've identified. So if it's okay, and I know this is, you want to get this on the agenda, would you mind affording us at least a week to let you know?
Well, we really just need to have an understanding on the part of the motion that the council passed. How about this, that without objection, the motion is as soon as possible?
I appreciate that. Yes, sir.
Okay, is there any objection to that being the intent of the motion? Okay, so seeing no objection by consensus, that'll be the intent of the motion. Just wanted to make that clear so we don't have any concerns over that. Okay, anything further relative to the informational items before we go to action items? Okay, seeing none, our first action item from the Department of Planning, contract with Dr. Hammer. Joe, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, notwithstanding the motion that was just passed by voice vote regarding an engineering consultant, the department has prepared for your consideration a request to amend a current contract with Dr. David Hammer to address additional services that have been requested by him from the Watershed Erosion Task Force. Many of you are familiar with Dr. Hammer. He's done several presentations over the last 6 months in the city of Wildwood, has been out in Cox Creek on a number of occasions in that same time period, and was one of the initial consultants hired by the city right after its incorporation. Dr. Hammer has several tasks ahead of him, and the current amount of contract will not cover those tasks. Principal amongst those is assisting the Watershed Erosion Task Force in the review of the land use codes, further investigations of Hamilton Carr, Bonham, and Wild Horse Creek watersheds, and then equally important, assisting the co-chairs, Dr. Remy and Rick Archeski and city team members in this engineering process that we hope to get underway very shortly here in August and have information available for the budget cycle and 2021 shortly thereafter. The increase is approximately $12,500. The maximum amount would be $20,000, and there is money in the Department of Planning's budget for this consultant service. Thank you.
Thank you. So Joe, I take it you're looking for a motion for the approval of that expenditure. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. And then in 2 weeks, we would have a resolution for the city council's consideration.
Okay, similar to the motion that was just passed. Is there a motion from any member of the council relative to the request from the department made by Councilmember Remy, seconded by Councilmember Dodwell? Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Next item it's also under the Department of Planning, the Memorandum of Understanding relative to the Gateway Off-Road Cyclists. Joe, would you like to also speak to that?
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, Mr. Jacquin is sharing his screen with you all now. So on the screen is the site development plan that was prepared by the city in conjunction with Gateway Off-Road Cyclists for improvements at Bluffview Park. Contrary to past practices, in this instance, the city attorney, along with the city administrator and the Department of Planning and Parks, thought it imperative to have a memorandum of understanding with Gateway Off-Road Cyclists for these set of improvements in Bluffview Park. The difference here between Rock Hollow Valley and Bluffview Park is the extent of those improvements and what is anticipated to be a long-term maintenance need for at least two, if not all of the three major improvements. With the assistance of the city attorney, principally the city attorney, a memorandum of understanding was created. Gateway Off-Road Cyclists did provide a skeleton or framework for such. Mr. Young and his team put together a much more comprehensive document that addressed many of the department's concerns. That revised document was provided to representatives of Gateway Off-Road Cyclists. They have some comments that they provided to the city today, which are not incorporated in the document. But the intent tonight is to present the document to the city council at work session and answer any questions you may have regarding the document. Those should be directed primarily to John Young, but also if there are any questions about what the process is, what work Gateway Off-Road Cyclist is planning if the new members of city council are not aware. And then basically from that point forward to get an endorsement from city council regarding the memorandum of understanding, knowing that it will be back for formal action at a future council meeting, either in July or August of this year. Thank you.
So Joe, is the idea that the council would endorse the concept of what's shown and described with the final document, much like the earlier two motions to come back for final approval by the council, is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, that's exactly correct. Very good.
Okay, thank you. Well, with your help. All right. So does anyone wish to make that motion or have a question for Joe? Councilmember Farmer makes the motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Bartoni. So any discussion on the motion relative to the memorandum of understanding as to the Gateway Off-Road Cyclists? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Last item for you, Joe, under Department of Planning is the discussion relative to the 2020 Celebrate Wildwood event.
Again, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. Mr. Mayor and members of City Council, there is no written report on this particular item that is under the category for action. A lot of this transpired late on Wednesday and kind of dawned on me Friday morning that this is pretty important and you all should know about it, so my apologies. As part of this presentation, Mr. Garitano, the City Council liaison to the Wildwood Celebration Commission, may certainly want to add some considerations and his point of view on the matter. Quite simply, for the last several months, the commission members have been debating how best to have a Wildwood celebration and art festival, a single event, given what COVID-19 is kind of dealing in terms of a card of hands or a hand of cards. Much to, I think, the department's surprise at our meeting last Wednesday, by unanimous vote, the Wildwood Celebration Commission recommended that the Celebrate Wildwood event be postponed to the spring of 2021, and the art festival be canceled for 2020. Again, it was a unanimous vote. And before we begin the process of notifying all of the interested parties that have expressed interest in the event, we wanted to ensure that the City Council was aware of their action and that the City Council had no objection to that action. And with that, Mr. Mayor, in your permission, I believe Mr. Garitano, the liaison, may want to speak to it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Councilmember Garitano, would you like to say anything about that?
Sure. Well, I'll first start off with thanking all of the Celebrate Wildwood Commission members, the city staff that have been working with them. The past few months, the commission has been meeting, and as Joe mentioned, discussions have revolved around whether or not we would proceed with an event for this year, 2020. And we've continued to wait till the point of where we have to make a decision, which was July 8th, to see what information would change regarding the environment, regarding COVID and other factors. So the commission made that decision. This is a big year for us because it is our 25th anniversary. And so while we really would love to celebrate it, we have decided, the commission has decided to postpone to next year. And next year we will recognize the city's anniversary event. But the factors that go into that decision, as I mentioned, the uncertainty with the environment, the potential risk to the city of holding an event while there is a pandemic going on, and then also the concern that we've done such a really good job with our Celebrate Wildwood events over the past few years. We've had incredible turnout and we've raised the bar. And so anything less than that would probably be a disappointment for folks because we wouldn't have the great event that we're used to having. And that's why the group just feels next year's the right time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Garitano. And we have Councilmember McCune up next. Before we get to Councilmember McCune, I think procedurally, the way that this, we may want to go with it just for the minutes and making sure that the council is recorded as being in favor or not, would be to get a motion on the floor relative to, if anyone is inclined, the approval of the recommendation from the Wildwood Celebration Commission. We have a motion to that effect made by Councilmember Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. Okay, so with that, Councilmember McCune.
That's what I wanted to do, was make the motion to move forward. And I really applaud the commission to making that hard decision to say that we needed to postpone it. I know it wasn't easy, so I just wanted to say thank you. So the motion's there, so I just wanted to support that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on the motion? Councilmember Bertolino? No? Okay. All right, seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Who was the abstention?
Me, Ken.
Councilmember Remy abstains. Okay, so the motion carries. All right, that
you.
takes us to the last item, which is an executive session. We would need a motion to go into executive session along with the recorded vote made by Councilmember Farmer. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Dodwell, and this will be for those council members who are physically in the building tonight. Just for everyone's information and those who may be watching, we do offer a Zoom option for council members that wish to participate, except with respect to executive closed sessions. For a number of reasons, those must be held only in person on the advice of our city attorney. So we have a motion to that effect. Ms. Eldridge, would you please call the roll relative to moving into an executive session?
Councilmember Garitano.
Would I abstain?
Does he abstain? Okay. Councilmember Flasher.
Yes.
Councilmember Boat.
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell. Yes. Councilmember Nyan. Councilmember Bartoni.
Abstain.
Councilmember Bros.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Edens.
Yes.
Councilmember Remy.
Abstain.
Councilmember Farmer.
Yes.
Councilmember Galani.
Yes.
Councilmember McCune.
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo.
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes, I'm sorry, abstain.
Did you say you abstained, Councilmember McCutcheon?
Yes, abstain.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the motion carries. We will move into a closed session and we will return to the council chambers after that to adjourn the work session, and after that to have the main meeting. Councilmember Dodwell.
Is there any reason we could not hold our meeting in this room and ask that the audience step out to the lobby for this time period?
I think we could probably do that if you would like to do that. And the rest of the council, is that your wish, Councilmember Dodwell?
I'm making a motion that we stay in this room and the 7 or 5 or 6 people that are in the audience excuse themselves.
Okay, we can do that. How about we do it this way? Without objection, that's what we'll do. I sense there may not be an objection to that. So anyone object? Any member of the council? Okay, so seeing no objection, that's what we will do. And we will need the clerk to stay in the room with us for this. Yes, please.
What?
I'm sorry. Oh yeah, he's doing it.
We should leave the Zoom meeting, right?
Yeah, so would everyone in the room please leave the Zoom meeting?
Okay, totally leave or just?
Totally.
Okay. Perfect timing, John.
Yeah. Julian, can you hear me?
Okay, Marcus, hold on.
Yes, I can hear you now.
What are you saying?
Yeah, I think I might.
Yeah, then I would close that computer.
Yeah. Just hit the leave meeting button there on the computer itself. Megan, if you just on the laptop, hit the leave meeting button. Yeah.
Sam, make sure to mute your microphone.
Well, still a little difference.
Yeah, so like, if you check public hearing, it would be for this, so this
No.
is like, so.
Okay.
Did you want to hear it?
Okay, all right, council members, we are back in open session for the work session, the remainder of it, and all that's left essentially is a motion to adjourn. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn the work session of the city council, made by Councilmember Edens, second by Councilmember Flasher, non-debatable motion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, thank you. And so that takes us to our main meeting. Starting just a few minutes late, I want to thank everyone who's here with us this evening and who is watching or participating by Zoom for your patience. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the City Council of the City of Wildwood for Monday, July 13, 2020. Ms. Eldridge, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Bowen.
Here.
Councilmember Garitano.
Here.
Councilmember Flasher.
Here.
Councilmember Boat.
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino.
Here.
Councilmember Dodwell. Here. Councilmember Nyan. Councilmember Bartoni.
Here.
Councilmember Bros. Here. Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Edens. Here. Councilmember Remy. Councilmember Remy.
Here.
Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Galani.
Here.
Councilmember McCune.
Here.
Councilmember Rambo.
Here.
Councilmember McCutcheon.
Here.
Okay, thank you. For those of you who are comfortably able, if you would please stand with me to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the June 22nd, 2020 work session and regular meeting of the council. If there are no questions or comments, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented. Motion made by Councilmember McCune, second by Councilmember Bros. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the minutes? Seeing no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Moving next to public participation, we do have some speakers here, and for those wishing to speak, that is, we are making that available here at the council meeting physically, and I just want to mention a few things about that before we start. It's an important and valuable component of our meeting. Anyone who wishes to speak must complete a speaker card and provide it to the city clerk, who is seated to your left of the podium. When your name is called, please approach the podium and state your name and your ward. To ensure that all who wish to speak have the opportunity to do so, there is a 5-minute time limitation, and I will let you know when that time limit is reached. If you have any questions for us, please mention that during your remarks and identify the official that you would like to respond. That official will make note of it, and at the conclusion of public participation, any official who chooses to respond will have 3 minutes to do so as to all questions directed to that official. The official may choose to respond to your questions after tonight's meeting, and we may also post any responses on the City Council page of our website. And finally, please be respectful to others in making your remarks. That means that interrupting others and using profane and abusive language are prohibited, and I want to thank everyone in advance for following these. First speaker card, please.
Jamie Hood to speak about road construction.
Good evening, and I'm not being rude because I have a medical condition and thank God I don't have to wear the damn thing. Oh, sorry, bad word. Anyway, I'm Jeannie Hood. I own 3 French hens. And the reason I've appeared before you tonight,
And your ward, Ms. Hood?
the one I live
The
in,
ward you live in?
6.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
My apologies.
I think I put the address of my store, but anyway, the reason I came is that first off, I'm grateful that we're getting this Manchester Road construction almost finally done. There was a glitch when they did my driveway. So I know that there's been a revision of getting in and out of my property. And tomorrow night, there's to be a vote on the budget. I've not seen any revisions of the new plans. And so I don't know that it would be well for this council next week to vote on a budget when I haven't had the opportunity to look at the plans, look at the revisions, and make a decision that would work for my business and for my building. So that's really why I came here, is just to make you aware that if it's approved tomorrow night, the budget for the revision, and it's called a change order, that apparently it appears before you next week for approval. But if I can't approve it based on my business and getting in and out of my property, I don't know that it should go to an approval tomorrow night and then come to you. And if I've not seen the revisions, do we take it back? So I did call Rick Brown. I've asked for a copy and not received it yet. So that's the reason why I'm here, just so you're aware of, as a property owner, business owner, I should be able to approve what's going to happen to my property. That's it.
Thank you.
And well, maybe I should just say this real quick. I'm not done. Is it the agreement of the city council that as a business owner here in Wildwood, that I should see the revisions before anything's taken place to my property?
So this is really a time for you to speak. If any member wants to address that question after you're done and other speakers are done, they would have that opportunity.
Okay, cool.
All right.
Just to let you know, thank you. Then I'm just heading home. I've had a long day.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker card, please. All right, thank you. Would any member of the council wish to address the question that was positive? Councilmember Garetano.
Yeah, I do believe Ms. Hood brought up a good point, and I think there's, regarding the question, the Admin Public Works Committee does have it on the agenda for tomorrow night, and this pertains to the a change order with several items, so not only that item itself, but several. But I would probably have to defer to our Public Works Director as far as the plan and whether Ms. Hood could get a chance to review it. I would hope that maybe we could still address the matter tomorrow at the Admin Public Works meeting and be able to still take a vote on it and then send it to council. And then during the period of time between today's meeting and the next city council meeting, if there are any concerns, that they can be then addressed at that council meeting and have the council then decide, which they would be anyway, taking a vote.
So we have one other hand. I just want to mention this is limited specifically to answering her question, which was, I believe, would you want her to see the plans before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we should have her see the plans. But, you know, given how this is coming up tomorrow, that's why I wanted to make a mention of that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Remy.
Yeah, I agree with Councilmember Garetano. I think Ms. Hood should see the plans. If we could get them to her in the morning, I think it'd be most helpful before we have the Admin Public Works meeting tomorrow. She's certainly a welcome member of our business community, and clearly there was maybe some areas of opportunities for improvement in the oversight of this project that could be improved moving forward. And I'd like to see those plans be put into action so we can evaluate this tomorrow night.
Okay, thank you. Councilor McCune, did you have your hand up? I see you leaving the meeting, but you're good? Okay, all right. Okay, next, anyone else wish to answer any question from residenthood. All right, seeing nothing further, going into mayor announcements and appointments. First announcement, we have with us a senior representative from Reuben Brown, which is our external auditing firm, who wishes to say a few words about the city's audit. Please proceed.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ted Williamson. I'm a partner with the firm of Reuben Brown, and I wanted to speak about the financial statement audit for the city for the year ended December 31st, 2019. We completed that audit this year. The audit fieldwork was conducted mostly in April. The report was issued before the end of June, which is the reporting deadline for those financial statements. And as I'll highlight here in a moment, everything went extremely smoothly and the results of the audit were very good. In your materials, you have a presentation that looks like this, which goes into detail on the results of the audit. In the interest of time, I just want to highlight a couple of things. If you turn to page 2, as they're numbered at the bottom of the page, so if you turn past the table of contents onto page 2, there's really 2 things we're auditing when we do the audit. We first audit your financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2019, to make sure that those are accurate and fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles as set forth by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And additionally, because of the level of federal funding that you receive, we also have to perform what's called a single audit, which is a compliance audit with those federal funds. In your case, the federal funds consist almost entirely of highway planning and construction funding. And when we say federal funding, we mean funds that originate with the federal government, even if they are passed through the state of Missouri before they get to the city of Wildwood. So as indicated here at the top of page 2, we're pleased to report that we issued an unmodified or a clean opinion on the financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2019. We also did not identify any what we call significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in your internal control structure. And finally, we issued an unmodified opinion on compliance with the provisions of the federal grants that I mentioned a moment ago. The other thing I would highlight is on page 4, at the very bottom of the page, the last item that says corrected and uncorrected misstatements. We're pleased to report that we did not identify any adjustments that had to be made to your financial statements as a result of the audit. It's not uncommon for us on any audit to at least have a couple of audit adjustments. So it's quite a testament to the good shape in which your books and records are maintained. Apart from that, the rest of the document goes into a little more detail on the results of the audit. And at the back, there are some tables that kind of summarize the financial results of the city. Again, I think most of those indicators are very strong. But with that high-level summary, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Hey, thank you so much. Appreciate that. So every member of the council has been provided with the comprehensive annual financial report, and you've heard his overview. Is there any comment or question, Councilmember Dodwell?
I would just like to indicate a thank you to Dawn and her staff for the commendable job that they continue to do. And then I do have a question for you for the 2020 year. Have staff already been briefed with any updated tax and or auditing requirements due to the COVID-19 process that we're all going through?
That's an excellent question. The good news is because of the onset of COVID, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board that comes out with the rules for accounting has deferred the implementation of most of the major standards either a year or 2 years into the future because everyone's attempting to deal with COVID. Now, to the extent that you've received any of the CARES Act relief funding, there's some accounting rules associated with that, and we'll make sure to work with Dawn that that's accounted for correctly this year.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Rose.
If I look at page 6 and 7, just overall, how would you say Wildwood's financial condition compares with St. Louis metropolitan area?
Sure. So let me summarize what you're looking at here on page 6 and 7. What we do after we complete the audit, we calculate a number of ratios, and then we compare that to a benchmark group that we have that consists of 41 municipalities within the St. Louis area. And so you can see we ranked you into quartiles on most of these things. And on almost all of them, you're listed in the first quartile, which is very high. You can see that your tax burden and your debt burden per capita is much lower than the other governments with municipalities within the St. Louis region, which is a very healthy sign. Also, your liquidity position and your reserve funds are compared very favorably to other municipalities within the region.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you so much for being with us this evening, and thank you for all that you do for the city. And just to tag on to Councilor Dodwell's comment, it really, this kind of a favorable report is due to many people involved, all of you sitting around this bench, but also Don Kaiser, Steve Cross, our city administrator, and others. So thank you so much, and thanks to all of them.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, have a good evening. Okay, moving into appointments, we have two. These are both reappointments, actually. The first is Steve Scott from Ward 6, who is a reappointment to our Historic Preservation Commission. You've been provided with my memorandum relative to the support that is there for his reappointment. And so if there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain those. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve Mr. Scott's appointment to the Historic Preservation Commission from Ward 6. Would you like to make a motion to approve Mr. Scott's appointment?
I'd like to move to approve Mr. Scott's appointment.
Okay, excellent. From the council member from Ward 6, seconded by Councilmember Galani. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Councilmember Edens.
I got to serve with him on historic preservation and he is a joy, so I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion for the reappointment, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Sam, I need to be able to see everybody here. I don't know what you're talking about, buddy. Okay, thank you. All right, had a little glitch there. Moving to the next appointment, Mr. Ed Kahn. He is from Ward 3. This is a reappointment to our Planning and Zoning Commission. Ed has served for the last 4 years on the commission and has done so quite well. Has an interest, a longstanding interest in our city. And so you have my memorandum for his reappointment. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve the reappointment of Mr. Kahn from Ward 3. Made by Councilmember Nyan. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Bertolino. All right, any discussion on the motion to approve the reappointment of Mr. Kahn? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the reappointment, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
We have one opposed, Councilmember McCutcheon. Any other opposed? Any abstentions? All right, motion carries. Congratulations. And I forgot to mention, my apology, that Mr. Kahn is with us in chambers this evening. Thank you for being here, Ed, and thank you for your service to our city. We appreciate it, and congratulations on your reappointment. All right. Okay, moving next to public hearings. We have one, PZ 7-20. Ms. Eldridge, please read PZ 7-20.
PZ 7-20, a request to review the current regulations and requirements associated with roof and ground mounted solar panels and how such petitions for installations are processed by the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. The current regulations and requirements were approved by the City of Wildwood, Missouri in August 2014 and intended to ensure that such installations would have limited impacts on adjoining property owners and publicly owned sites, while also preserving important woodland areas and grand tree specimens within the community. These existing regulations and requirements are applicable in all residential zoning district designations, R districts, including the NU non-urban residence district.
Thank you. Joe, do you have anything you'd like to mention relative to PZ 7-20?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, with your permission, I have a very brief presentation for the benefit of City Council. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, the Planning and Zoning Commission has provided for your consideration tonight its letter of recommendation regarding the matter that Ms. Eldridge just read into the record. The matter relates to solar energy systems. Back approximately 6 years ago, the City Council approved specific regulations relating to solar energy systems due to concerns that were voiced by residents. Over the past 6 years, the regulations have been utilized on a number of occasions, many of which, due to conditional use permits, were presented to the City Council for receipt and filing. Over the course of the last couple of years, the number of solar energy systems and their application for a conditional use permit have increased. That increase led the Planning and Zoning Commission to want to investigate if the current regulations were still satisfactory, were they too rigorous, or did they need adjustment? Ultimately, the Planning and Zoning Commission did retain the existing regulations, but did add some additional items to them. Those items, for the most part, reflect the city attorney's input relating to homeowners associations, better protection for grand trees, greater availability and opportunity for fire district input, a clear message on building codes and compliance, the addition of landscaping components, which almost all of the conditional use permits have contained, and then finally, a statement toward best practices for the end of useful life of the equipment, the panels, and all of the arrays, etc., once they are no longer needed. The changes were fully discussed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And again, ultimately, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended changes in this regard by a unanimous vote. After public comment, the Department of Planning will be available to answer any questions relating to this particular matter. I would note that the mayor sits on the Planning and Zoning Commission and can assist in responding to any questions regarding it as well. And thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And before we get to any any speakers on the public hearing, just one question. I'm assuming what you would be looking for from the council is a motion to prepare the necessary legislation to make the modifications to the existing ordinance concerning solar panels. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir, and thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any speaker cards, Ms. Eldridge? Okay, so we have no speaker cards. Are there any questions for Joe, or would anyone like to make a motion? Councilmember Dodwell. Is your microphone on too?
Mute. Hang on a second. Joe, a couple of questions for you. And if you're hearing me redundantly, my apologies. I'm having technical difficulties this evening. As the updates to panel designs continue to become less obtrusive, will we have to come back to this issue in another 2 years? Or can we ensure that the text in this document and this zoning ordinance will allow for more rapid approval of the panels when placed on homes? I guess I've heard from residents that it is such an arduous process to get approvals that they're waiting 6 to 9 months, sometimes 12 months is what I've heard. I don't know. I don't have those statistics from your P&Z committee or the city's P&Z committee. So I'm concerned that we have to come up with some way to streamline the request process and get that moving through faster for our residents so that they can avail themselves of the benefits that some of our utility companies are providing in different windows of time. Also, just from a resident's perspective, I want us to look to be an efficient process for our residents, not an arduous one. So I guess I'm just trying to make sure that in the document that you've presented to us, I didn't really see anything that moved that quicker.
Councilmember Dodwell, I actually think the modification that was recommended by the city attorney relative to homeowner association participation will actually help to cut the amount of time associated with the review process and the granting of a permit if authorized by the Planning and Zoning Commission. We still want the homeowners association to be an integral part, but in some instances, what we found is just because of the trustees' schedule, concerns about conflicts with indentures, it has delayed some of them. I would say that each permit request is a little different. The ground mounted types, which are less frequent, take a little more time because we are concerned about impacts there more so than roof mounted. But we'll do everything we can always to expedite. There's a lot of players in any process for a permit. And I can't say we're always the best, but I certainly will tell you that we'll try to expedite when we can. And I think the change recommended by John Young, our city attorney, will achieve some of that.
Thank you, Joe.
Councilor Bertolino.
Joe, you mentioned the grand tree specimens that we're trying to, the preservation of the woodlands and so on. How is that applicable when we're talking about private property? I know that the last panels that I remember us discussing and approving happened to be in my ward. And we had some assurances from that homeowner that the trees on his property would not be cut down or even trimmed at this point. And within of the panels going up, his trees were gone. So do we really have any jurisdiction to enforce our grand trees on private property?
Councilmember Bertolino, we do. Even outside the context of solar energy systems, we do require a site visit for the removal of a grand tree. Most of our residents respect that process and follow it and allow us the opportunity to do a site visit, make sure that we understand why it's being removed, and if there is restoration, we can certainly require it. It's part of our tree preservation and restoration code. Here, more so than anything, it isn't to preclude necessarily the removal of any grand tree. It's just to ensure that if it is removed, steps are made to address the loss of a grand tree by replanting.
Okay, seeing no further question. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Edens.
So not necessarily specific to grand trees, but still on the same topic. So it was maybe last fall when we had a resident that was in and had gone through planning and zoning, and there was a long debate about finding a middle ground. And
we got someone with their volume turned up that's causing some squeaking and reverb.
Yeah, it's
I
pretty.
want to make sure you can be heard there. Okay, try it.
Is it
the
podium maybe? Okay. It's actually quite hard to hear myself.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Edens.
Okay, so for everybody also not on council, I want to say it was in the fall last year, but I can't quite remember. We had a resident that had gone through planning and zoning, and there was an effort.
So if everyone in the room would please turn their volume down. If you're not speaking.
Yeah, mine's all the way down.
Try it again, Councilor Reed.
Okay, third time's the charm. So, forgot, now my iPad fell, I apologize. It's just a day for it. Where was I at in the story? Oh, anyway, so the resident was trying to find a happy ground. The folks that were across the street from him did not want a tree in his yard to be cut down. This would have been, I think, the only instance where the city would have been requiring the tree to stay as is, but it was not a grand tree. The tree was just blocking what would have been new solar mounts rather than traditional shingles. So the argument was, I don't want to look across the street and see solar mount panels. And his argument was, I would be the only one on the street required to not be allowed to cut my tree. The roots are going towards the driveway. What if it fell? I'd like to just be able to do tree maintenance. So when I saw a review of tree regulations tied to solar mounts, I guess my question for you, Director Vunich, is are we going to be more or less likely to run into the same issue?
Councilmember, oh, sorry.
Let me turn my volume down. Hang on just a second. Okay, go ahead.
Councilmember Edens, it's a very good question. And my response would be the proposed change in the regulations actually removes the process from the Planning and Zoning Commission and gives the authority to the Department of Planning. Now, at first blush, you might think, well, why is that? Well, with the Planning and Zoning Commission only meeting twice a month, that adds a delay. And the thought was if the department could investigate, make the decision, then report at the next available meeting, it would expedite the process. And in the case that you've cited, ultimately what happened is the commission did require the tree to be retained. Ultimately, the property owner requested that that be removed, which it was, after the department had arranged a visit to the tree by an arborist. And the arborist reported that at the end of the day, it was a tree that was threatening private improvements, the driveway, sidewalk, and that in terms of its removal, it wasn't, let's say, the end of the world. So it worked out favorably for the property owner. Took a little time, but we got there.
It did certainly take time, but I'm glad it came to a reasonable end. I just want to make sure that we're not boxing ourselves into a corner with tree regulation that we create future issues. So thank you for addressing my concern.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Councilor McCutcheon.
Yeah, so that incident was in Ward 5, and my concern, I didn't see anything that would require a resident then to replace a tree, maybe somewhere else on the property. Is that possible?
Mr. Vinich, would you like to address that?
I apologize. I got a notice my internet connection was unstable here at City Hall, and I didn't hear your question, ma'am. I apologize.
That's okay.
Repeat it.
Yeah, so again, that was in Ward 5, and the tree was removed, but my concern is I didn't see anything in the information that would enable the city to ask the residents to replace a tree somewhere else on their property. So is that possible?
Certainly, under the Tree Preservation and Restoration Code, which is cited in item 4 on page 9, that gives the authority for tree restoration, particularly in the instances of grand trees. So there is an option there. Obviously, it's a little difficult when a private property owner is trying to make an improvement to the lot, his home, and needs to remove a tree. We try to measure what's in the best interest of not only the property owner, the neighborhood, but the whole community. But we think we have the tools, Ms. McCutcheon.
So it does not have to be a grand tree. It can be,
Typically, we would not require a grand tree because we're talking in some instances 24-inch caliper. So what we end up doing is asking for more trees at a lesser caliper to compensate. And so in the end, if the grand tree is removed, we may get a nice little grove of trees in replacement.
so if the tree that's removed is not a grand tree, is there a way to require replacement?
Under the conditional use permit, we can certainly, and we have.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Would anyone like to make a motion to have legislation prepared consistent with the recommendations set forth in PZ 7-20? Made by Councilmember Gross, seconded by Councilmember Bertolino. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Moving into legislation, second readings. Bill 2551 is before the council for final passage, and it concerns wards 1 and 5. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? We have a Councilmember Bertolino, seconded by Councilmember Clark. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
We have one opposed, Councilmember Edens. Any other opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2551.
Bill 2551, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the current name of Pond Grove Road, inclusive of its entirety within its jurisdiction, to be renamed Pond Grove Parkway, which is reflective of the city's park facilities that anchor either individual and keep within the naming protocols of the Office of Emergency Management, OEM, of St. Louis County, Missouri.
Thank you. Joe, do you have anything you'd like to mention relative to Bill 2551?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, in direct response to an action of the City Council, I do have just a couple of items. This particular bill was introduced approximately 60 days ago. At the conclusion of that discussion and before the second reading of the bill, the City Council requested that a better estimate of the cost of replacing both city and state signage in association with Pond Grove Loop Road be provided. With the assistance of the Department of Public Works, specifically Rick Brown and Brendan Marr, the department was able to determine that better estimate. The estimate that was provided at the introduction of the bill was approximately $10,000. The estimate that is provided to you tonight is approximately $13,800. Again, with the assistance of the Missouri Department of Transportation and our Department of Public Works. The good news is we actually think that estimate is high. The Missouri Department of Transportation is listening to the Department of Public Works about reducing the size of the two interstate signs that are in conjunction with Route 109 and Pond Grove Loop Road. Those signs are more expensive, and if we can reduce their size and make them more residential in character, their costs will also decrease. So tonight, the department is providing you the information requested by City Council before the second reading of the bill. And both Mr. Brown, our Director of Public Works, and I are available for any comments. And thanks to Julian for sharing the screen.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, Joe, we had discussed before about lighted street signs there instead of the large green signs that look more like exit signs, because that's been a complaint of the residents for quite some time. Did you get a bid on the lighted street signs?
I did not. I was unable to get it in time. And I think the department's approach to this is let's get the smaller signs first, and then we'll certainly be able to address the lighting thereafter. So no, I do not have the information. I was unable to obtain it. My apologies.
Would those possibly be less costly than the green signs?
Probably not. What we found in the Great Streets project when we illuminated the street signs on Route 100, those were a little more expensive because obviously they have more mechanism to them. But certainly, like I say, I think with the cost savings we would receive from reducing the size of the signs, we could probably offset that with the cost of lighting. So I think the $13,800 estimate may cover it all.
So the signs that you proposed, how much bigger are they than the regular street signs that we currently have in most of Wildwood?
Again, I would have to defer to Mr. Brown on that. He is the expert on those types of signs from his background. And if he doesn't mind, I'm going to mute myself and let him respond.
Councilmember McCutcheon, as far as the street name signs or what is now Pond Grover Loop Road, I would expect them to be slightly smaller, but quite frankly, I don't know that the signs at the roundabout would be that much smaller. They would be similar in size, slightly smaller is my expectation. They have not been designed, so we don't have a firm estimate on their size at this point.
So to my recollection, I don't see any other signs up and down 109 that are the size that are at the roundabout at Pond Grover Loop. Is that correct?
No, I don't know that that's correct. They are comparable signs in the other roundabouts or the exits of the roundabouts. The letter heights are uniform. They are based on a national standard that MoDOT follows for letter heights for street name signs. And that's what drives that size of the sign ultimately is the size and the height of the letters that are used for the sign.
So Main Street Crossing, the actual street sign, it's not a large green sign, correct? Isn't it a black sign, just like the other typical street signs that you see anywhere else?
The Main Street name sign at the roundabout should be similar letter height as the one at Pond Grover currently. They're based on the same standard. They should be basically the same size letters. The size of the sign is reflective of the number of letters that are required in the street name.
So let me put it this way. So the street sign on Birch Forest Drive, how does that compare to the street signs that is being proposed to put it at Pine Grover Parkway?
Well,
Birch Forest?
Birch Forest are Green Pines, are Babbler, View.
So those would be smaller on residential streets because they're designed for a slower speed. So those signs do have a smaller letter height, generally speaking, and that is reflected in the overall size of those signs. It's reflective of other signs or a state highway in the case of Route 109.
So but that's my point. And I think that's been the issue for a long time is that Pond Grover Parkway is actually a city street on both sides of 109. And so now we're requesting signs that are more appropriate for a highway exit sign. And anywhere else up and down 109, that's not the case. They're just the typical street signs. So my concern is that we're going to be putting signs at that location that are much bigger than at other locations, which has been a huge complaint of residents.
Well, as I said, I wouldn't expect them to be bigger, but I wouldn't expect them to be much smaller either.
So is there some way that we can go back and get a bid for smaller street signs at those two locations? Because that is not a highway exit. Those are two city streets, or one city street which crosses 109. And that's the only street that's going to have those large green exit highway signs.
Well, again, it'll be similar to the other roundabouts in that respect. It's the street signs are designed for 109. So it'll be similar to the other roundabouts that have already been.
Well, Atherton Road sign that just precedes that, it's a smaller sign. It's not an exit type sign. You know, at Babbler View, it's a regular street sign. It's not an exit type sign.
So, Rick, before you answer that, I just have a question. I don't think I've heard an answer. Is there a requirement from MoDOT or other regulatory reason why the signs need to be the size that they are? I mean, if they are, then that would, I guess, in the matter. If they're not, and it's a matter of opinion, then maybe Councilmember McCutcheon may want to make a motion to postpone or something so you could do more research. So what's the answer to that?
Oh, and that was the point I was trying to make. They are based on a national standard. That standard is the manual of uniform traffic control devices, which MoDOT follows. So they are not bound to change or deviate from that standard when they sign highways such as this. So it's not really a decision we can make. It's a MoDOT decision that we have to live with, frankly.
Well, again, and then I will stop making comments. I just don't understand what the difference is at Pine Grover Parkway versus any of the other streets up and down 109. So if there is a possibility for you to go back and have a discussion with MoDOT about that, then I'd rather do a postponement.
It did not receive the final sign plans from MoDOT. I think it would be a little bit premature to do that. I'd suggest that we receive those plans and then review them and provide comments to MoDOT at that time. But they haven't even designed them for us yet. This is a cost estimate based on our best judgment as to what will be required from MoDOT.
Well, then in that case, since we don't have a definite answer and we don't know exactly what the plans are, I'm going to make a motion to postpone until the next council meeting when they can come back and get some more information.
So we have a motion to postpone. Is there a second to the motion to postpone? Seconded by Councilmember Bertolino. So the discussion now will be only on the motion to postpone, not on the bill itself. I had on the list next, Councilmember Bartoni. Do you want to speak on the motion to postpone, or were you going to speak on the bill itself?
I was going to speak on the motion itself, but I was going to actually make a motion to postpone, but for other reasons. But I think that with the questions that Councilmember McCutcheon has brought up, I think we need to probably get some more information ourselves and give Rick and his team enough time to let's get the design from MoDOT. Let's get the actual cost. I mean, this is, we are in a budget situation, tax revenue is down. So I think we need to have all the information we can have before we need to vote on this. And I think that's our responsibility as to our residents.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dodwell, I had you next. Were you speaking on postponement or on the main motion? Okay, she's passing. Councilor Garitano, same question on the motion to postpone or on the bill itself?
I will speak on the comment about regarding the motion to postpone, but I also had a point of information regarding the signage. The one at Main Street and 109 is of that size. I have a picture I can show if anyone wants to see it. But regarding postponement, I think if folks have concerns from a budgetary perspective, my question would be that maybe while the postponement is going on and you're getting that information, is it possible, since it is currently Pond Grover Loop, that you maybe would look into just replacing the loop portion, 4 letters, and Parkway, which is PKWY, which is also 4 letters, and that would be with an overlay, which would save money. And I think I've seen that in some instances. I don't know if that is something MoDOT would do, but something worth looking into.
Thank you. Councilmember Edens, on the motion to postpone or on the main motion?
Do we need to have in the motion to postpone that a cost estimate be given for some sort of temporary sticker as Councilmember Giratano suggested.
Without objection to the council, I think that would be part of the package that Mr. Brown would come back with information on, if there's no objection to that.
Absolutely, and I understand Councilmember McCutcheon's concern, but I think my gut feeling is that, you know, if you're not happy with the product and money is an issue, then don't put something out just to put something out. Wait until a better product comes along and there's more money in the bank. So, thank you.
Thank you. And then last, Councilmember Remy, were you speaking on the motion to postpone or on the main motion?
I'll speak on the motion to postpone, just because I have a clarifying question. I remember when we brought this conversation up in Parks and Planning, Mayor, that's about the timing and the urgency of it, if you will, which would then directly relate to postponement. So I'm just refresh my memory, if you guys don't mind. Was this us generating the need to change the name and to make it the same as the park? Or were we being requested by the state, the county, or by MoDOT to do so? And I only ask this question because we moved this forward many months pre-COVID. And I just want to understand the urgency to have to do it now.
Rick Brown, could you please answer that question?
I guess to partially answer, I think Joe may want to respond to it rather than me, but it is certainly the city's requesting that the sign be changed. We're the ones renaming our street. It has to be reflected on MoDOT's sign. So we're making the request of MoDOT with the renaming of the street that the signs be changed to match. As far as the history, I might defer to Joe to speak more towards the introduction of the bill.
It is an internal request, not an external one. The city is asking to change the name.
And Mr. Wooden, would you just mind, just in regards to is there any urgency to do this at the moment?
Not necessarily. In fact, we have less than 2 weeks to ask MoDOT to come up with a sign plan and an estimate of cost. And I don't think that's enough time. They, like us, are in COVID-19 and they probably have a million other things. So I would respectfully request that we could have it not 2 weeks from tonight, but 4 weeks.
I'm okay with that.
Thank you.
So since the motion has been made and seconded, it is in the possession of the council. It takes a unanimous consent to agree to a change to the motion once that occurs. So I'll just ask, does anyone object to changing it to 30 days from 2 weeks if this motion passes for a postponement? Okay, seeing no objection, that will be the motion. Madam Clerk, if you could please record that in the minutes and reflect it. Seeing no further discussion, this is a vote on postponement. An affirmative vote, a yes vote, will postpone it for 30 days for the reasons indicated. A no vote will not. If it doesn't pass, we'll come back to the main motion. If it does pass, the motion is postponed. All in favor of the motion to postpone, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving next to Bill 2560. It's before the council for final passage and it concerns 4 wards, wards 1, 3, 6, and 8. Is there a motion for the second reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Giratano. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Flasher. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Clerk, please read Bill 2560.
Bill 2560, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, hereby authorizing the mayor of the City of Wildwood, Missouri to execute a contract with MB West Contracting Company for the resurfacing of various public streets within the City of Wildwood, including traffic control and other incidental items as shown on the construction drawings and specifications.
Okay, thank you. Rick, do you have anything further you'd like to add to this, to the information on this bill that's been presented to the council?
I do not, Mayor, but I'm available for any questions or comments from the City Council.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Rick or any comments on Bill 2560? Seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2560.
Councilmember Giratano.
Yes.
Councilmember Flasher.
Yes.
Councilmember Bope.
Yes.
Was that yes?
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan, Councilmember Bartoni,
Yes.
Councilmember Gross,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McKean,
Yes.
Councilmember Rambo, Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yes.
Okay, Bill 2560 has passed. Moving next to first readings, we have one, Bill 2561, and it's before the council and concerns all wards. Is there a motion for the first reading of the bill? Made by Councilmember Galani. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Farmer. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, would you please read Bill 2561?
Bill 2561, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement on behalf of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, with Shawnee Mission Tree Service Incorporated, doing business as Arbor Masters Tree and Landscape for the treatment of ash trees located within the public right of way to prevent infestation by the emerald ash borer pest, including other incidental items as shown on the project specifications and documents.
Thank you. Rick, I'm going to ask if you have anything further you'd like to mention relative to Bill 2561. And I have one question I'd appreciate you answering for the council's benefit. And that is, as we all know, we've had a lot of discussion over several weeks, maybe months on this particular item. And I know that part of that has been the need to get moving relative to this from an ability to get the value out of what we're spending it on with the season and so forth. So my specific question is, after you comment on whether you have anything further to add, whether you would like to have a second reading of this bill this evening for that reason.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would respectfully request a second, or consideration for a second reading tonight for this bill, because time is of the essence. If we're going to move forward, we really do need to get the agreement to the contractor and start that work as soon as possible. But I am available for any questions. It has been discussed quite in depth at prior work session meetings, as you know.
We have had a lot of discussion. Okay, any questions for Rick? If not, I would entertain, as he's indicated, a motion for second reading. Is there a motion for second reading made by Councilor Dodwell, seconded by Councilmember Brost? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Eldridge, please read Bill 2561.
Bill 2561, an ordinance of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to negotiate and execute a city contractor agreement on behalf of the City of Wildwood, Missouri, with Shawnee Mission Tree Service Incorporated, doing business as Arbor Masters Tree and Landscape for the treatment of ash trees located within the public right of way to prevent infestation by the emerald ash borer pest, including other incidental items as shown on the project specifications and documents.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any further comment or questions on Bill 2561 before we call the roll for final passage? All right, seeing none, Ms. Eldridge, please call the roll for final passage of Bill 2561.
Councilmember Flasher,
Yes.
Councilmember Bope,
Yes.
Councilmember Bertolino,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Bartoni,
No.
Councilmember Gross,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Edens,
Yes.
Councilmember Remy,
Yes.
Councilmember Farmer,
Yes.
Councilmember Galani,
Yes.
Councilmember McCune,
No.
Councilmember Rambo,
Yes.
Councilmember McCutcheon,
No.
Councilmember Garitano.
Yes.
Okay, and Councilor McCutcheon, was your vote yes or no? I'm sorry.
I said no.
Okay, did you record that? Okay, got it. All right, thank you. Moving into resolutions, we have none. The last item is a miscellaneous item. This is an expenditure to Demian Construction Company. The city administrator had reached out to me earlier in the week about approving this, and while it could technically be done, I believe, without council approval, I thought it best to have it before the council. City Administrator Anson, would you like to speak to this bill for background on for the benefit of the council?
Yes, sir. Thank you, members of council. The item for approval this evening is an expenditure with Demian Construction. As they have been working on the new park in Ward 5, they have had a need they requested payment of this invoice in order to proceed with the next phase of the work. Last week, Councilmember or Director Bush and I had a discussion about this item, and it will technically come to you under the approval expenditures at our following meeting, but we are hoping to be able to release the payment prior to so they can continue with the work. And Director Vunich is certainly available to answer questions as well.
Okay, thank you. If there are any questions for Joe or Sam, we can entertain those. Otherwise, I would ask for a motion to approve this particular expenditure. Made by Councilmember McCutcheon. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Bertolino. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Councilmember Brost?
Does the work completed?
Joe, I've heard that question. Does the work completed support the payment, Joe?
Actually, Councilmember Brost, it does. They had a major expenditure when they began purchasing the playground equipment, the shelters, as well as the restroom. A lot of, like I say, equipment needs. And we received the pay request just after the deadline for the June 23rd meeting of City Council. And with the extra Monday in June, it's kind of been sitting for a long time. And Deneen has asked just if there's any way possible, they would appreciate it.
So is it somewhat of an advance payment?
So you're saying, Joe, there's some advance payment to this 100,000. So we're making a credit decision.
There is a bit of advance payment. There's a lot of equipment that's been ordered that's on its way, and they'd like to have the money in hand when it arrives. The money is part of the budgeted amount for 2020. It's not like we're going to reserve, but yes, that's correct. A bit is credit, so to speak.
Okay, any other questions? Councilmember Edens?
Is that unusual? They're still bonded, so if they would default, not finish the work.
Am I able to hear a comment?
Her question was whether they are bonded. So if there were an issue, we would cover that. Joe, do you have the answer?
I'm assuming the question is this somewhat unusual? Yes, because of just the timing component. With the agendas needing to be completed by Wednesday before the Monday meeting. As I say, we've had the pay application since probably that Thursday, and we missed the meeting for June 23rd. We had the extra Monday, and it would now be another 2 weeks. So it equates to almost 6 weeks of time between last pay request. And so it's more just a matter of the scheduling. Yes, it is unusual. I typically don't bring requests like this to City Council.
I meant, jumping off of what Councilmember Burr said about it's some upfront payment almost as a credit, in addition to what they've already paid for that's being shipped, that's a tangible good that we have on hand. And I said, just to address concerns, they still should be bonded in case they would ever go bankrupt or default.
Yes, we have a bid bond,
right?
And the bid bond is a requirement of all of our projects. I guess what I'm saying is if the pay application had been received a day or two earlier, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The park needs to proceed forward. I would be surprised you would want to delay the park any longer. It needs to be finished, and I'd like to get it finished for fall.
Councilor McHugh.
So have we opened up our parks?
We have everything open except the restrooms and playgrounds, and we're following St. Louis County's lead.
Okay, so that was just a quick question, as you said, to get this finished. So my only concern is that I've seen in other things, even if they have a bond, and let's say they default, it's going to cost us money to exercise that because they don't make the payment. The second piece is that this is unusual. I don't want the city to set a precedent or future requests as such that we run into this issue again. If they can't front the money, I'm just a little concerned for a 2-week delay. What's the big deal? So again, I just want to caution the council. I think if it's a 2-week delay, I don't want to get into upfront credit money. I'm not an accountant, but I just think that it's a bad type of business and we should avoid it if we can.
So I'm not going to speak for or against the motion, but for clarification, and I guess the city attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, if the council approves this and they were to have financial difficulties and we exercise under the bond, I suspect there are provisions in the agreement that would allow us to recoup not only the amount that's at issue this evening, but also the cost of pursuing that amount to collect on the bond.
That was a standard form in our form.
Okay, yeah, so attorney's fees and so forth. So we would not be out money to collect on the bond. It would be the actual legal fees and so forth to do that would be included as part of the bond, the request to exercise recoupment under the bond. Councilor
Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry.
I think I misunderstood
Yes,
Council Member Bro's question. This is a legitimate pay application. This is $100,000 for work that they completed and have the background material associated with the pay invoice to provide the backup. And so this, I misunderstood the question. They are purchasing equipment on credit, but that equipment has yet to be billed to the city. What you have before you is a request for a legitimate pay application that's been reviewed by the park designer and signed off as well. So my apologies. They pre-purchased the equipment and they count on the payment of the invoice to reimburse the supplier. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Dodwell.
I can agree with what Joe just said. This vendor has purchased the equipment 6 weeks ago. Due to the things that have happened on the property, they have not brought it on to.
Let me unmute myself here in a third different way. Because they have not brought the equipment onto the property yet, they have not billed us for this equipment. They want to get that payment as part of the process. It's unfortunate that Joe and the staff did not put this on an earlier agenda so that we could have the time frame associated with it to be aware of what the cost is. But I see no reason not to move forward with us applying the funds that are already budgeted, already available to this project that we as a council have determined needs to be completed this year.
Councilor McHugh.
So thanks for the clarification, Joe, with Councilmember Bro's question. I think that clarified some issues with me. Again, I respect Councilmember Dodwell's request and I see the concern. I just don't want to set a precedent going forward. So I just want to caution, if the department, meaning Joe Vunich, is comfortable with it, then I will support the staff. But again, I just don't want to make a mistake for the future.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, I'm sorry, Councilmember McCutcheon.
Yeah, I just wanted to FYI, some of the playground equipment is in fact on site.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve the expenditure, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
We have one abstention, Councilor McHugh. Any other abstentions? All right, that takes us to adjournment. I just want to thank again this evening, Sam, our city administrator, and Julian in particular for handling the multi-faceted part of our meetings with the Zoom and in person. And so thanks guys for that. I guess I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Made by Councilmember Giuliani, seconded by Councilmember Farmer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned. Thanks to each of you, and we'll see you next time. Have a great rest of the week.